Hey, yo, what's up, guys? The Insane Game Freak here, and today I'm here to make a video about Tokyo Mirage. Tokyo Mirage Session Sharp FEO for the Wii U. Ooh, don't ask me why I have two copies. There's a story behind it, and I don't feel like telling it right now, so fuck it. But I wanted to talk about this game because I don't feel like there will be a lot of people who make videos talking about the game and how it is as an overall video. I mean, as an overall game and what it brings to the table, whether it's from the Fire Emblem side or the Shin Megami Tensei side. So I felt like this video was necessary for nothing else but that. So we're going to talk about it. First things first, people need to understand something. This game has way more Fire Emblem representation than you think it does. A lot of people don't think it does because they're only looking at the aesthetics. The way the game looks is more based around Shin Megami Tensei / Persona than anything else. Which is why I always find it funny when people are like, oh, it looks more like a Persona game. And I've said that too. But when you realize, when you go back and look at some of the older Shin Megami Tensei games, the older Shin Megami Tensei games look like Persona games, aka where Persona derived from. So of course it makes more sense to say this is a crossover between Shin Megami Tensei and Fire Emblem, because the Persona look that we think this game has comes from Shin Megami Tensei. That's besides the point, though. Let's come to talk about some things about it that I enjoy. The first thing is I like the characters. I like the focus on each of the characters and having them have their own side stories. It's like typical RPG fare, but it's good here and I enjoy it. I like the battle system where essentially it's kind of like what China Light's battle system was, where it's like a rotating turn list. Like a full round isn't until everybody attacks, but it's rotating, and you can actually change your position if you can stun or charm an enemy, or pretty much make it where the enemy can attack, which means you skip their turn and it'll jump to you kind of logic. It's kind of like a strategy in itself, that maybe you're using a technique that doesn't do a lot of damage, but it allows them to skip their turn, which means your next ally gets to attack first. It uses the combination of the Shin Megami Tensei battle system and the Fire Emblem battle system, meaning characters follow the weapon triangle. Most of like the actual major players follow the weapon triangle, whereas the monsters follow more of the weaknesses to HP, which gets into the whole session abilities, which are pretty much chain attacks, which is essentially something you can do in Shin Megami Tensei, where if you could hit a weakness, you could keep slamming on that weakness and not even give your opponent a chance to retaliate. It's the same thing here, but just like in Shin Megami Tensei, if you fuck that up and they hit their weakness on you, if they hit your weakness repeatedly, they can do the same thing. The same thing with session attacks. Once they get that weakness once, and some characters are really bad at it. For example, Kidia, who is your mage user, she's the one who has Starger as her Mirage. You hit that bitch once or twice with sword techniques and trigger a session, that bitch is dead. Kidia has like no defense whatsoever against mages. I mean, against sword users. It's fucking disgusting. Her defense is ass. Her physical defense is ass anyway. Magical defense is okay, bro. Physical defense is ass. And I like that. It's taking elements from both of the battle systems, even though people like to act like it's just taking from Fire Emblem. No, it's taking from both. I also like that it does the thing that Bravely Default and Bravely Second don't do, which is when you hit an enemy with a technique that they're weak against, the game remembers that you've already unlocked that as a weakness. So if you ever fight the enemy again, you don't have to worry about figuring out his weakness and shit. Whereas in Bravely Default made you do the stupid, either use Examine or the magnifying glass item, which means you had to fucking do that, because it wouldn't just, even if you hit his weakness on accident, it wouldn't show you that you hit the weakness. That's kind of how, and the cool thing is, because with sessions, you can literally try like 4 or 5 different weaknesses in a session chain. It's fucking beautiful. The battle system is god tier. I fucking love the battle system. The best thing about this game to me is the characters and the battle system, because that not only makes the game, but it also is the reason why you want to keep playing. It's the mix and match. People are like, oh, but there's no Fire Emblem representation. Almost every fucking side story with these main characters feature Fire Emblem representations. Like, there's a lot of side stories that call back to like Shadow Dragon and even Awakening in terms of the side characters who show up as side bosses or like side characters for the side story. Sorry, it's late. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning when I'm recording this. And that's cool as fuck. The only thing I don't care for is that a lot of them don't get unique designs. They literally just take the design of what their class looks like in that game. So if they're like an axe user, they all look the same with maybe some color and size variations. That's about it. But it also rewards those users for, like, if you're a Fire Emblem fan and you're playing this game, you don't need to fucking figure out a weakness as far as their physical weakness, because it's like, okay, well, you're using a sword, so I'm going to automatically have either Tsubasa or Toma out. Oh, you're using an axe, so I'm going to automatically have Yashiro or Itsuki out, which Itsuki's automatically out. That's like the one thing I don't care for. Itsuki's always out, so what the problem turns into is that you end up having Itsuki is slightly over-leveled near in-game. He ends up becoming over-leveled. It's not to a disgusting amount, but it's a decent amount. I'm trying to think. As far as the battle system goes, though, it's pretty fun. I have a lot of fun with it. To me, the worst aspect of the games is two things. One, the fucking load times, which at first won't get on your nerves until you play the game for long periods of times. I have 80 hours clocked into this bitch. And oh my god, fuck the loading times. The loading times aren't like insanely offensive, but they're offensive enough. Especially because they start building on each other. The other problem with this game is the fucking dungeon design. People do not realize the dungeon design for Token Mirage Sessions is very fucking annoying, because it's that dungeon design that essentially means all the dungeons are structured this way, by the way, which is part of the problem. The structure of a dungeon in Token Mirage Sessions is you start the dungeon, you get about halfway through the dungeon, you fight a sub-boss, then you get stuck because of a plot-related reason, so you have to go out of the dungeon. You have to go out of the dungeon, do the plot-related thing, go back into the dungeon, then do the other half of the dungeon, and then fight the boss, and then do story shit at the end, and the dungeon's over. Which is very fucking repetitive and very fucking slow, because these dungeons are long as fuck. It takes you like over an hour to get through a standard dungeon. The other problem is that this game promotes the fuck out of backtracking. To give you an example of what I mean, the game follows kind of well, actually, I don't think Fire Emblem didn't do that. I don't think. No, I can't think of Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem doesn't do this, but they do this thing where you can master your weapons, and this is how you get all your abilities and skills, is by mastering different weapons, by using different items to make those weapons. So you're encouraged to go to dungeons, beat new enemies, get those items, go back and make new weapons, and then go back and fight more enemies to make more new weapons, and repeat the process over and over until you have multitudes of skills. And because the skills can stack and you either become more powerful or require less EP, magic points to use, it's highly encouraged. The problem is that it results in you backtracking all the motherfucking time, where you're literally going from, you'll go like 3 or 4 fights into a dungeon, backtrack into Fortuna office, go into the Bloom Palace, change out your weapons, maybe add a new few skills, go right back and work right back to the fucking dungeon. This is why I said the load times start wearing you thin, because you're loading every time you leave the dungeon, every time you enter the Fortuna office, every time you enter the Bloom Palace, every time you do the fucking Carnage Unity, and the unities to fucking build weapons and to get skills and to change classes. It's all loading screens you gotta deal with. And then you gotta get to the loading screen when you walk out of the Bloom Palace, and walk out of Fortuna's office, and walk into the hub where you select the fucking level you're trying to go to. You click the fucking place, and then you have to walk all the way over there to the goddamn to the gate to the fucking Adalasphere. You're going to the Adalasphere, then you have to walk over to the fucking warp gate, and then select the part where you were at to warp. You select it, then you go back, and now you can carry on. The loading screens for this game will break you purely if you keep playing this game in like giant sessions. You really don't need to be playing Token Mirage Sessions at like fucking 5 or 6 hour chunks, because the loading screens will wear thin on you. And I think the biggest problem is that the game makes you backtrack too much. And the one thing I don't like is that the game tries to cut down the backtracking by having a warp skill you get pretty early in the game. The problem I have with it is that you warp me to the wrong place. Like, it warps me to Fortuna's office, and once in the Bloom Palace is where you need to go to get all your skills and weapons and shit. But you can only get to the Bloom Palace by going to Fortuna's office and then going into the back door, and then you can go do the Bloom Palace stuff. Why not have a warp ability that just takes me to the Bloom Palace so I can skip a loading screen? The other thing I don't like is that only the main hub of Shibuya allows you to hit the X button and actually warp anywhere you want to, no matter where you are on the map. Whereas every other map in the game, other than Shibuya, you have to walk to the end of the map where it says exit before you can actually exit the map. Now, for some maps, it's not as big of a deal. For other maps, it's kind of a pain in the ass, and it just adds to the monotony of it all. Added on top of that, the dungeons themselves aren't inherently interesting. It's just kind of like, I don't want to do this shit. Like, the reason why you keep playing the dungeons is for the battles, and because the battles are fun, and then you get new abilities and skills, and you can start mixing and matching. It even has master skills where you can change your class. The only thing I don't like about the changing your class function is that it's only really between two classes. Like, Chrom, I think, goes from being like a lord, like a major lord to like a fucking conqueror. Or you go from like Myrmidon to assassin, or fucking sage to a what the fuck is it called? Sorcerer. Oh. There's not enough variation with the classes. Now, granted, there's a reason for that. For one, you don't get master skills until pretty late into the game, and two, you don't really fucking need them. They only make you really want to reclass once, because it's not like Awakening where you can keep reclass. Well, you can keep reclassing as long as you have the item, but the only reason why you would need to is to get new items, which allow you to get new skills. All in all, it's one of those games that like is really fun at its core, and that's the reason why you keep playing. But some of the slog you gotta go through to get to the fun is what will fuck you up with Tokyo Mirage Sessions. It's a fun game, but it has so many minor things about it that I can see easily turning away. It's not, to me, this is not a noob friendly RPG. I think Bravely Default was a better noob friendly RPG, and even that game suffers for plot reasons. At least this game has good side characters and cool abilities and cool animations and a lot of personality and charm to it, which makes it very appealing to watch. The other thing I probably would, and as I said, I complained before about Itsuki not being changed out in the party, which is not only an issue because of him being overleveled, but also he's a sword user. Now, up until you get Yashiro, he's the only sword user you have. So it's not inherently a problem until Yashiro joins. When Yashiro joins, which is your last character and your second sword wielder, and the only real difference with him and Itsuki in terms of stats is that he gets different special moves than fucking Itsuki does. Itsuki's more based around electricity, whereas Yashiro's based around, like, I think I would say, like, wind and fire. But just under sword moves. It's hard to level. You don't want to have two swordsman character on you at all times, especially considering a lot of the game is, like, against swords characters for the most part. So it's like there's no reason to have, like, two of them on the squad. But the other thing I don't like, and I think this is an issue with just any RPG, is that for some reason they give the magic users, particularly that would be Tsubasa and Kiria more so than Tsubasa. Kiria ends up getting a brand of magic called Almighty attacks, which are pretty much like the god techniques of this game, that can't be used in session and can't chain into anything. You can't chain it into anything. That's the biggest problem it has. And it's like, and when you get the stronger variation of it, doesn't mean anything because you're still stuck behind the passive shit. It's kind of a pain. There are minor annoyances I have with the battle system, but overall my biggest issue is the dungeon design. If they could figure out a way of either making the backtracking less rampant, because the problem is that once you master your weapons, you can't gain any more skills from them. So you either can go through the rest of the dungeon with a master weapon and lose out on all the potential experience you could get, or just say fuck it. Now, granted, I would say fuck it if you bought the DLC, because the DLC is so broken that you could literally cheat the game if you wanted to. The DLC allows you to pick up these tomes and like spirit tomes and like something else. I forget what the other thing is called, but these things that increase leveling up the weapon and leveling up your character, and the shit happens so quick it's disgusting. Like, you could abuse it to the point where it's insane. Now, whether you want to do that or not is up to you. I'm just saying, it's fucking nuts. But I kind of just wanted to give these quick thoughts on Tokyo Mirage Sessions because I think it's a fun-ass game. I fucking love this game. This is probably one of my favorite Wii U games. The problem with it is it has like 80 million save files, but the game also has major frame rate dips if you use like really major spells that chain right into a session. I think Kidia's like major ice attack does that. Where you go into a session from Kidia's ice attack, it will make the game drop frames like a motherfucker. The dude's like moving in slow motion. The music is great. I like the stuff about the industry. I like the story. The story even ties in with Fire Emblem near the end of it. Not going to spoil that for you. But the game has a lot more Fire Emblem references in it than you would think. It's one of those games that could be a cool ass sub-series for Nintendo if they're willing to do it. And I kind of hope they do. The only real major suggestion I have in terms of what they have in terms of core gameplay, maybe add in the relationship feature because the game subtly keeps throwing it out there every 5 seconds, and also fix the issue where the dungeon design. You fix the way we handle dungeons, or fix the way the game loads, or fix that process, because I don't like the fucking I go halfway through a dungeon, have to fight a sub boss, stop, go do something plot related, come back, do the other half of the dungeon. Also, just better dungeon designs. They're all like revolved around you doing really stupid medial shit across the fucking map. Then you come back just so you can open a damn door. It's a problem. The first level being the biggest pain in the ass, where it's like, alright, you gotta change the fucking mannequin's pose so you can get up to a certain level, but you have to get to certain cracks and crevices in certain levels, and you can't get to this door because you don't have this ability that you don't get until way late game, so it's kind of fucking irrelevant. Like, the game encourages you to visit previous idolospheres. You just never want to do it because all the idolospheres, even after you beat them, are tedious as fuck. And the final boss isn't that hard in the grand scheme of things either. Actually, found there are some sub bosses that are harder than that, which also gets into the problem of, oh yeah, by the way, there's a boss rush. It's not really a boss rush, but it's like a pseudo boss rush at the end of the game. So, but yeah, that's my thoughts on Tokyo Mirage Sessions. Please leave yours in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. This has been the Insane Game Freak. Let's game, play to win, and I'll get you guys later.